After speaking with and meeting hundreds of Humber College real estate students over the past 18 months, I start to see the challenges a lot of people are facing. I have in-depth videos and playlists on courses 1 through 4 and the simulation sessions, but I'm going to start doing a few videos on specific topics that seem to be coming up a lot when I'm talking to Humber students. So if you have any topics you're struggling with, leave them in the comments below and I'll add it to the list. But this video is explaining, simplifying, and adding real-world experience to help understand a condition precedent, a true condition precedent, and a condition subsequent. Understanding these conditions is crucial because it not only comes up in course 2, but then again what feels like a whole day on in simulation session 1. We'll break it down so you know exactly what's what to help you on the exams, but I'll also add some real-world experience in, which I would have appreciated when I was in the program. Just quickly though, if you like these videos, consider liking and subscribing. It means a ton to me, but let's just dive right in. So how I like to teach and explain subjects is to make it as simple as possible and structured. First, we'll quickly touch on what a condition is, where it is generally located, and then the difference between a condition precedent, a true condition precedent, and a condition subsequent. First, what's a condition? Conditions in real estate set out stipulations that go with the contract that can result in a binding or non-binding contract based on a specific event or events. Simply, most conditions involve buyer's activities, such as obtaining financing, conducting an inspection, or the selling of the buyer's property. Conditions are generally found in the agreement of purchase and sale, and they are found on Schedule A. Real-world experience, spoiler alert, you will have condition templates that you will copy, paste, and sometimes slightly alter when writing up contracts, so don't stress too much. I'm an absolute huge advocate on templates, and having condition templates ready and waiting for you to keep the flow of a transaction, essentially your workflow moving forward, is essential. Conditions can be fulfilled, waived, or expire for a contract to be binding or non-binding. Okay, that's simply what a condition is and where it's located. Now the two types of conditions. So there's 3, but we'll bundle a condition precedent and a true condition precedent together as the first, and the second will be the condition subsequent. And real world, spoiler alert again, and to keep it simple, a condition precedent in the real world is used a vast majority of the time. So the goal over the next section of the video is to help you understand the slight differences between these types of conditions by giving you helpful tips and tricks to be able to tell them apart and remember those differences so we can get those extra crucial marks to pass the exams. Starting with a condition precedent, again, by far the most used condition in the real world. It is an agreement calling for an event to happen or an act to be performed before the agreement becomes binding on the parties. Meaning that if the condition is not fulfilled or waived, and keep that in mind, the waived part, because we're going to touch on that again, no binding contract has been formed. The parties must take action to create a binding agreement. So both the buyers and the sellers still sign the contract, but both sides are placed under some degree of obligation related to the terms of the accepted offer, essentially the condition. The buyer most likely having a bit more to do and organize because let's say it's a condition on a property inspection, they are to pay for it and schedule it. The seller just has to keep the property available to allow the buyer to do their due diligence. Let's look at this condition here that has been written up as a condition precedent, and I want you to see a key point that makes it stand out as a condition precedent. This is a condition on a property inspection, and at the bottom here, it indicates that this condition is included for the benefit of the buyer and may be waived at the buyer's sole discretion. So keep that in mind as we discuss the other conditions. A condition precedent can be waived. Okay, on to a true condition precedent. In certain instances, a condition must be fulfilled exactly as it's detailed in the offer for the transaction to proceed. This condition must be met. It may not be waived. No waiver provision, like we just saw in the last condition, can be used because the condition must be fulfilled for a binding contract to be created. This condition is used when the nature of the condition requires the consent or approval of a third party that again cannot be waived. The contract is not capable of being completed without the fulfillment of the condition. 2 examples of situations where a true condition precedent could be used is if the buyer has agreed to assume the seller's existing mortgage, but the buyer must be approved by the lender as a borrower. Again, in the real world, very rare will you encounter this one. Or for example, a property that is being sold requires consent to, say, sever one part of the property from the whole property. In this instant, consent will typically be given subject to certain conditions, including compliance with the Planning Act and municipal bylaw. Since a true condition precedent cannot be waived, if you look here, a notice must be provided within the time limit indicating the condition has been fulfilled. If a notice indicating the condition has been fulfilled is not provided, the offer, the entire contract, automatically becomes null and void. So quick summarize with a tip and trick again, a condition precedent can be waived, a true condition precedent cannot be waived, but in both cases, something has to be done for the contract to be binding. That's why those two, the condition precedent and the true condition precedent, are bundled together. I do want to mention that all conditions written are written in good faith, and both parties must act reasonable in satisfying the written conditions. On to the second type of condition, the condition subsequent, and this second method of drafting a condition does have distinctly different characteristics. A condition subsequent, in many ways, is the opposite of a condition precedent. It provides that if the party does not wish to proceed with a proposed transaction, they must take action to terminate the agreement within the time limits. Remember, a condition precedent and a true condition precedent, an act must be taken. The condition must be waived or performed before the agreement becomes binding on the parties. But a condition subsequent is deemed binding by the buyer and the seller once signed, and an action must be taken for it to become null and void. Real world spoiler again, it is very rare that you're going to use this type of condition, but let's understand it. Let's call that action terminating. That's a key word there to remember again, because when you see a condition subsequent, action must be taken to terminate the agreement, or else it will be considered binding. So the condition could still be for example, financing with a time frame of completion, but if no such notice is received, a notice can be in the form of an email, of course, within the time limit, then this contract shall be deemed waived by the buyer, and this agreement shall remain valid and binding. So a couple key phrases to identify a condition subsequent. Terminate. The buyer may terminate this agreement through written notice, and at the ending, if no such notice is received within the time limit, then this term of contract, essentially when it says term of contract there, it means this condition, so that doesn't sound confusing, shall be deemed waived. Essentially automatically waived by the buyer, and this agreement, this contract, shall remain valid and binding. Just be careful there sometimes. When people word their conditions, they throw the word, for example, term of contract. So term of contract is just condition, so don't get confused there. As mentioned, you won't be using this condition often in the real world. It does not work well for buyers. I would avoid using the condition subsequent whenever possible, or if you have to, use it on a relatively insignificant condition. It could even be bad for some sellers, because if both parties are obligated to do something and one side fails to do it, even the seller, it is deemed to be done, which could have serious consequences. I really hope this helped, and if you're anything like me and you're a visual learner and need things to be explained in detail through video, I suggest maybe watching this again if it didn't quite stick. Because once you understand those key little differences in these conditions, you can start to navigate the exams with confidence. If you have any questions at all on this topic, leave them in the comments below or just DM, email, I get back to everyone. Again, information you will see in course 2 and then pretty heavily again in simulation session 1, so it's fantastic to understand. I'll leave this playlist here that breaks down each course and more to help you as you progress through the program. But my name is Callum Moore, eXp Realty real estate agent here in Ontario. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you in the next one.